Welcome to the Let Me Be Free podcast. My name is Jackie.
And my name is Alwynn.
We're two sisters from Ireland living in Australia, navigating our healing journeys together, and this is our podcast, Let Me Be Free. We'll be interviewing everyone who's helped us to get us where we are today, whether that's therapists, loved ones, people from our Facebook group, Let Me Be Free the Wounded Inner Child, or people who we've never met but have had huge impacts on our lives. Follow along with us on this journey as we try to dissect what has really worked for us in the hopes that you too might be freed. Before we jump into today's episode, just a friendly reminder, guys, to have a look in the timestamps in the description to make sure that all the topics that we discuss today are comfortable for you to listen to.
Okay, so welcome everyone back to the Let Me Be Free podcast. Today we have Davy Rowe, who is a coach. I actually randomly ended up meeting with Davy because I went to check out his venue here in Perth. And I think we talked about the venue for about 2 minutes, and I loved him so much. I just ended up sitting with him and talking for about an hour and a half. And I get a very good feeling off people. I understand people who know the process, who don't. It's not just that surface level. I've trained to be a coach, but I've experienced life as a coach. And one thing that, I really found so precious was just you as being a male in that role. And also you, I feel, really came in from that crack and shift in your own experience in your own life that ended up going in this totally different direction. Yeah. So, let's start off with, I know you talked a little bit about that, I guess, tipping point for you that shifted from the man you were to the man you were going to become. And so I'd love you to just give a little bit of a background into the man that you were before you had that tipping point. And then also, I'd love to understand a bit more about why did you decide to heal of all things? Or did you think that you were starting to heal after that? What was the thought process? Because I feel like for us all, it's a very different path and a different journey.
Yeah. I think, thanks, Alwynn. I think the more you reflect and you go through your own story, and the more we can actually dig deeper into where it started, and it fundamentally all of our wounds come from past experiences, come from childhood situations and whatever. And with the work I've done now, the punchline was my father died when I was 8. I created this core limiting belief that I had to provide for my family as an 8-year-old child. I didn't realize that, obviously. This was totally deep subconscious wounding and this massive shadow. And then as I got into the workforce, I became this driven machine to provide. And fundamentally, I couldn't turn it off. So I became this pretty successful, but driven, owner of a business in Perth. And it got to a point where literally I was at a breaking point where there's a voice in my head talking about driving the van off the road and, end my life in a sense. And because I needed help, I needed something to shift. I needed that. I was physically, mentally, emotionally exhausted, and I needed that break, and that was like 20 years ago. And that was the first time I really took a deep dive into self-development work, coaching. And that was the real start of me healing. Not that I really understood it as healing there. And a lot of that early work was all mental, was all just trying to get a relief out of your head, because, the vast majority of we're living with heads, and it's not serving work,
Can I ask you, was that a conscious thing? So I find that, when we look back on our journeys, we can kind of see it as this conscious thing. I want to drive this car off the road. But I feel like so many things are so subconscious. What was the lead up to that point? Can you tell me a little bit about what your life looked like? I really want other men here and women, but to be able to kind of see themselves in this story. Were you, really off the rails, shouting, screaming, whatever? Or were you just kind of going through life completely thinking that you were fine, but not actually consciously joining the dots that you weren't happy? What did your life look like?
That's exactly it. I was born in the UK, poverty stricken as a child in a sense, and then met Angie, loved me life, was still married, been married 38 years this year, just got my first grandchild there crying in the background, which is beautiful, you know. My daughter and her husband's living with us, you know, for a few months, which is great for their waiting for their house getting built. But yeah, so it's like this. We had this great life, and we still do, to be honest with you. We had the business. We came to Perth in 1990. The interest rates were massive. The company I was working for went broke. We had to start a business in a sense. It was sink or swim. Otherwise, we were returning back to England. And so we started this business not having a clue what to do either. Me and my wife, me and Angie. And we just worked so hard and eventually created this really good, successful business. And on the surface, consciously, and for our friends and family, I played soccer. We had some great friends. We still have within the soccer community and whatever, like quite an English community up here, up north. We're living in Ilook, and that, you know, I'm down Burns Beach. And it was like we had this great connection. And on the surface, everything's perfect. We've got money. We've got a successful business. We've got a happy family, great relationship. It's like, what is the problem? And fundamentally, there wasn't a problem, but subconsciously, deep below, this need to provide for my family, to keep pushing and to keep pushing and to keep working, this drive, which with the work I've done, I discovered it was all I ever wanted was a father in my life to guide me and to show me what to do. And of course, he was dead. I couldn't get that. So I was like a dog chasing its tail. And I was looking for answers elsewhere. So I was looking for approval and acceptance from out there, when fundamentally it was deep within. I didn't accept myself. I didn't approve of myself.
And so really on the outside, you were like living the perfect life, I guess, you know, when you look in, but in reality, everything that you were doing was to fill that void, that space of the only thing I really ever wanted was my dad to be able to take care of me. And it's so interesting that you say that, actually, Davey, to be honest, because, you know, I was talking to my sister about this a few days ago, and, you know, I think that so often, so many of us, really what the root of what we're doing is we're looking for that approval. We're looking for that love from our parents that we never got. We're looking for, if they thought we were stupid, or if we believed they thought we were stupid, we achieve so that they can see that we're smart. And one thing that I recognize, and it's really interesting because you were the catalyst of this, actually. You know, I was talking to Jackie about this interview, and I said, you know, Davey's, his energy is beautiful. Like, he's got a really lovely energy.
Thanks.
And if I could think about having a father figure, you know, I was like, I would love to have Davey as a father figure, because I really feel like he's got such a gentle space and a gentle heart. And I didn't realize that I was looking for a father figure or someone to be my father until I met a friend years ago. And he was an older man. He was from England as well. And we just got on so well. And you know what? I really loved him as a father figure. And what I realized, it's only in later life when my memories of childhood abuse from my father was suppressed. And so that came out after that. But what I found, Davey, was that relationship with this friend of mine healed a lot of these wounds, because what happened was, in this friendship with him, I felt so safe. He never saw me as a sexual object. No. He never ever crossed the line. He was always there for me. He was so protective of me, and he just loved me for me. And I remember all of this pain and all these wounds and the healing that brought me, because I realized, you know, that's what real love is. Like, I never experienced what it felt to be loved by a man. Like, my father taught me that love comes with conditions, that love feels bad, it feels dirty. And to be able to have that relationship with a father figure, it really rewired my brain of, wow, that's what safe love is. That's what I always deserved and I never got. And it just was so heartbreaking that a lot of us have never really gotten that nurturing, that love and that safety.
Yeah, we yearn for it. We
yearn so deeply. We replicate it in our marriages. We replicate it in so many of our relationships.
We search. You know? We constantly search for what we haven't got, you know, and we cannot give what we haven't got. So we are trying to love unconditionally on a level of acceptance and compassion and kindness. And yet, if we don't feel that inside, we cannot love at that level. We cannot accept at that level. We cannot be compassionate at that level, because we haven't got it for ourselves. Yeah. To me, the only way the healing starts from within, when you are prepared to do this work, and you have to look within, and it's scary. it's scary for people because they don't want to deal with the shadows. They don't want to deal with the darkness, the parts of themselves that they've kept hidden and locked away for all these years.
Yeah.
Because
And
soon as we open that box and bring them parts out, we get triggered and we go back to that emotion, back to that feeling of I guess, insecurity and fear. And it's like, quick, lock it up. Let's just pretend that didn't happen.
yeah.
And we lock these areas up and we go through life living a reasonable life for a lot of way. Maybe you're not on the front, but deep within there's a lot of pain, there's a lot of suffering and a lot of hurt. And the healing has to take place within,
Definitely. And I think there's this element, isn't there, of, I know lots of people who have a conscious awareness of, oh, well, I have a fucked up childhood, and my dad used to beat me, or my mom died at this age, or I was abused, whatever. But I've dealt with that because I consciously know all about it, and so I'm fine. Yeah, I'm fine.
Yeah.
It's you have the awareness of it. Like, I know my husband, we talk about his childhood and stuff, and he's like, oh yeah, well, that's fine. That happened. And I was like, but we never questioned it as how traumatic is that for the child within you, that child. Yeah. I'd love to ask you, Davey, do you feel that it's a different element for men? Because, I was pushed to heal. Like, I guess initially it was the miscarriages. We had 4 miscarriages, and I started going inwards. I was given that message to go inwards, and I started doing that. And then, I started getting all the anger and stuff and realizing there was something not right.
Yeah.
For me, really with my own husband, it got to that point where I kind of I just had to say to him that you're struggling. I can feel you're struggling, and you're projecting a lot of your own anger and sadness onto me, or he was just really struggling. And I was like, you have to heal this, or I can't stay around anymore. Like, I can't be the emotional punch bag to hold all of this pain for you when I'm barely swimming myself. And so for him, I know in that moment, he was very brave to make the decision he made, because he had every opportunity to say, my wife has absolutely lost her biscuit. She's fucking lost the run of herself. She's gone nuts, because I was completely off the rails at that point.
Yeah.
And he could have easily turned around and said, let's separate. This just isn't for me, totally. Yeah. But instead, his biggest fear, I know, is losing me. And so he was like, I'm left with this decision of either doing what I really don't want to do, which is going inwards, or leaving her. And so he did decide to do the work, and he's my absolute hero. I love him more than anything in this world. He's incredible. But I'm asking, what's the difference? Or is there a difference with men? Is it harder? Is there more of a stigma? What do you feel as being a man going into this space? Or is it from your clients?
Yeah. I think there's definitely a stigma and an acceptance that women can have conversations and copy mornings and meet with the girls and have a whinge about the guys and have a laugh and get a lot off the chest and open up a lot easier than men can, and I think especially the working class provider, which is really what I relate to, but obviously any level, whether you're privileged background or whatever, you are still dealing with trauma and stuff within that you don't even realize you're dealing with. You're just not happy. You're not seen. You're not comfortable within your own skin in a sense, and you're surviving. And I've done different men's programs and different things, and it is literally, I remember creating this slide, and it was like a guy miserable lying at half asleep in bed, and it was literally Monday morning yet again, and here we go. It's like this Groundhog Day of just repeating the same pattern, and there's so many men in pain screaming for help with it without making a sound.
And what would that screaming look like, Davey? Could you give me a bit of what are the symptoms of that? What would you see?
That's exactly what you were talking about. It's anger, it's aggression, it's sarcasm, it's low level, it's dark humor, it's picking on people, bullying, having to be the alpha male, having to control things, having to be right, controlling the kids, leaving a mess without actually, you know what I mean? It's just this chaos, which he has to get this out. This energy has to come out somewhere. Yeah. This energy is inside. There's trapped, the way I see it is, there's trapped trauma energy in a somatic sense where it is trapped within your soma. It's within your body, and it has to come out. And it's like we used to call it like the fizz off the top of the bottle. You're driving along and someone cuts you off. Fuck, and you boom, lose your temper. Fizz comes out and then it settles down. And you might be fine for a few days, an hour, whatever, however far you're in it, And at my worst moments, I remember literally like on a Friday evening, like Friday night, coming in, driving home from work, it was like literally like just breathing, like I've got the weekend now. And then on a Sunday, I noticed in the afternoon, this rise, it would just come up, the water level would start coming up. And on a Sunday evening, I'd be going back in, ready to go to work on the Monday again. And it was just, shit, here we go. Boom, yeah. I'm back in. And it was just like that for months and months and months. That darkness of like drowning, just surviving,
And it's so, it's so funny because when I look at and reflect on my husband, he was nearly the opposite. He was like, Monday to Friday. When he got to Monday, it was like routine. He knows what he's doing. Yeah. He feels safe in his routine. But then when it was like Saturday morning, waking up, it's like, okay, I have to deal with the kids' emotions all day long. I have to deal with the emotions of everyone around me all day long. And it's that need to, he felt safe within the provider role. It's like when I go, I provide, that feels safe. I know what my role is. Yeah. So I feel a lot of men don't understand what their role is in the house with the wife and the children, because the wife is kind of like, well, I'll do all of this. I'll do the disciplining, and I'll do the cooking, and I'll do all of this. And I feel like so often the men get lost in, well, what's the point in me being here? If I'm only here to provide, what is the point in this? Like the loneliness, the sadness. And then the wife is like, why don't you ever fucking help me? All subconscious. They're not actually talking to each other. It's like, why don't you see me? Why don't you see me? It's so sad. If you could hear the thoughts in the people's minds, we're just in these cesspools of suffering. And I love what you said about the road rage, because I remember saying to my hubby one day, he got really angry, and he would never, ever take his anger out at home. He would never get frustrated at home, But I remember he was getting really conscious. He was starting to do his own work, and he got really angry. And I said, babe, if you don't deal with this right now, all you're going to do is take all of this helplessness you're feeling right now, you're going to bring it out into the road, and you're going to wait until someone just does the slightest thing, and then you're going to try and run them off the road with your anger, because you need to get this anger and frustration and sadness out, and you're not safe. You don't feel safe to do it here with me and the kids. That's like not acceptable for you. It might be acceptable for other people, depends on what the patterns are. But I knew that he was brimming, he was bubbling up, and he was just going to look for some foreman to fucking step on his toes, someone to arc him. And for me, anger, when we get to that point, it's again, like you said, the anger is just, I feel like the fat on the top. It's the suppressant of the pain, the helplessness, the powerlessness. What do you see within that? How do you see that experience, when the man is feeling the anger and the rage? What's going on for them,
I think it's exactly what you say. You've got so much suppressed like feelings and frustrations inside, whether it's guilt, shame, sadness, grief, rage, whatever it is, and we suppress this from childhood, because we cannot show, especially for men, as we're talking about, it's hard for men to show the true feelings and to be happy and joyful and cuddle each other and show the respect and the love for each other. For a man to say I love you to another man, it's just like, what the fuck, you know what I mean? You cannot say that, especially in the construction industry and in the world. Yet when we sit and have a few beers, and that point at the end of the night, and you're there with one of your best mates, and it's like, I love you, like, you're a great lad. And he's like, yeah, mate, I love you, But that's it. We'll not speak about this ever again. It's when we drop with gods, and underneath we appreciate we're friends and we're brothers who have been there for us throughout our lives. It's beautiful to have that connection and that support of each other, but we can't show it in the real world. Because, we're going to be judged, we're going to be laughed at, we're going to be scolded, So I think fundamentally, for me, anger isn't a bad emotion. we all need anger. We need all emotions. Every emotion we will utilize as long as we allow them to flow. It's when we stuff these emotions down and we jam them inside where the anger turns. The anger builds up and it may come out as rage. It may come out as just violence, whatever. And that's because we've jammed all these little bits of anger down over the many, many years. Anger's a great emotion. Anger's a fucking great motivator. You know, you're working and you hit your thumb with a hammer and it's like, fuck, right, come on, boom, let's get on with it. You know, it can be an amazing emotion. But if it's allowed to flow, soon as we start stuffing it in, it starts festering and it starts growing into something different, growing into something more toxic. It's as simple as that. The emotions have to flow, you know?
You know, I totally, like, I resonate. Obviously, I talked to you a little bit before we started the interview about anger, my own anger. And yeah, like, I have fucking hated it. I have hated my anger. You know, I've rejected it. I've hated it. I've just seen it as, like you said, I've suppressed it for my whole life. I'm telling you, before I had kids, you would never see me angry. I don't think I even got angry once in my life before I had kids. No. And I hated them for it. No. I hated that they brought out that monster in me. No. And I felt such a resentment and anger towards them. You know, it was like they just kept on unapologetically. When they would feel anger, I was trying to be a conscious parent and allow them to feel anger. But every time they felt it, I felt viscerally in pain. I felt like I literally just wanted to get a knife and slit every part of my body. It was just such a visceral experience of pain. And this morning, you know, I'm really just feeling this recently in the last few days. I've been really tapping into this feeling of the angry monster within me, you know, and I was really thinking, I was like, I'm a fraud. I'm a fucking fraud, because I say to all these people, you know, like, oh, like, you know, we got to be conscious and loving and be, you know, able to help our children feel their anger. And I was like, but in reality, you know, there's so much anger still in me. Like, that monster is still there. I just keep her suppressed. I fucking shove some food down there, and I keep my outer environment so fucking controlled so that none of my kids or whatever, if they start to arc up, I'm like, oh, okay, panic, you know, here's the iPad, you know, grab a drink, grab anything that I can do to suppress the outer environment. So this monster, the devil inside of me, this fucking beast doesn't come out. And this is it. It's like, the reality is no one knows what's really inside of me. No one knows the darkness. No one knows the anger, the sorrow, whatever. And this morning, as I was feeling it, and I was like, you know, being with the kids, and I recognized that I started getting so angry with my oldest son. Like you said, the road rage, I was looking for someone to just release some of that anger. And when I felt into it, I was like, okay, you know, it's okay to feel angry. What is it? And I could just feel this resentment. I was angry at the kids for being born. I was angry at my life. I was angry about being abused. I was angry at my father for not loving me. I was angry at fucking everyone that ever fucking hurt me. I have never gotten angry. Like, I've had so much horrible things happen to me, and I just talk about them like I'm talking about the weather, because I have no connection to the reality of it was me. It was my reality. And this morning, as I was feeling into it, I was just like, I'm fucking angry. I'm angry that I had to suffer this much. I'm angry that motherhood is so fucking hard. Like, why does it have to be so hard? I'm angry that my kids aren't perfect fucking angels, so that motherhood was easy for me. Just so much anger, concealing so much pain at the fact that I don't want my life to be like this. I don't want to feel this way anymore.
I hear you, love. It's realistically the way I see it with the work I've done and the studies I've done. It's we go through life and things happen, and whatever the good, bad, and different, and we make them mean a certain thing, and we attach a core limiting belief to that thing. Like, when my father died, I made it mean I had to provide for my family as an 8-year-old child. I took on that responsibility. So in my later years, I basically was considering ending my life, driving a van off the road, you know, in a sense. So we create core limiting beliefs, and throughout the journey, we literally wear different masks for different occasions. You know what we're talking about that before, you know, with your husband about going to work. He's very comfortable. He has his routine, and he literally Monday morning, as he walks out the door, he picks up the mask off the wall and sticks it on his face, and boom, this is my work mask. I like this shit. I know what to do, when to do it, how to do it. Boom. Friday afternoon, that mask comes off. For some people it can, for a lot of men it can't, and they are literally in work mode continuously, and they can't switch off. And they only have one mask, which is literally driving the bus continuously. But that mask comes off, and your husband may sit there, or he used to sit there on a weekend. What the fuck's my role now? I've done me providing. I've supported you. I've got security here. Now what do I do? But where do I fit in here? And that feeling of being lost or not seen or, you know, not connected is like this. But the masks, fundamentally, when you go deeper, behind the masks, you are literally revealing shadows. And in your instance, for me, it's obviously from the child abuse. And the shadow, to find the shadow, the core wound of the shadow, we fundamentally have to go back, if we can, to the first time or the first major incident. And what will happen at that time, there'll have been part of you just disconnected. We've got this innocent child, something happened, something occurred, you made it mean this, you wore the mask to survive, and then part of you fractured off. And that part, that wounded part, is still there, but she's wounded.
Yeah.
And that part fundamentally needs to be integrated back into your home to bring you back to whole, to be loved, to be cared for. And if during this process, she needs to be heard in all of our visceral anger and fucking rage and just fucking violence, that's what she needs to be heard as.
Yeah.
She may
I
not.
think that's it. Like, I think, you know, it's always been that good girl. You know, I've had to be the good girl. Like, you know, to resist it was to cause more pain. And so it was to accept it. I didn't turn any of that hatred outwards. It was my fault. This is me.
Yeah.
I deserve this. I must have asked for it, you know? And it's that fucking self-hatred.
Yeah.
Self-hatred and that anger. I feel like self-hatred and self-loathing and that shame that comes with self-hatred and self-loathing, I honestly think it's probably one of the core foundations of childhood trauma, childhood neglect. It's like you said, this is my fault. I must have deserved it. And what I'm finding is, I think you get to a point in your life where that shit just gets too heavy to carry. I feel like it. Like, I feel like, I'm telling you, Davey, it's getting harder to walk. It's getting harder to move. I'm suppressing the life because all of that self-hatred and self-loathing, that belief system wants to be left behind. It wants to be packed up and put back to where it needs to go. That finger needs to be pointed in the right direction. But it's like, you know, in order to believe and deal with that, there's just so much pain, because when I have to feel that anger towards these people that hurt me, underneath that is really the core belief of, obviously, I'm just not lovable. I was never good enough. You know, I was never good enough to be loved. I was never good enough for a father to just love me and respect me as I am. You know, I had to be used as something, some tool for some other gratification, you know? And it's that core belief, like you said, that, and it's so unconscious, isn't it? It's so hard to get to those core beliefs. We focus out into the world so that we don't turn around and really face that visceral pain. All of that anger, all of it just hides that visceral pain of whatever that core belief.
I remember when the business went down in 2016, 17, we basically got done out of about nearly $1 million on a project in Perth, and we had to close the business after 24 years. I lost my identity. I lost my purpose. I lost my drive. I lost my confidence. And it was just like, I was literally just like, I didn't know what the hell to do. You know, I was in shock, literally in shock. But I had this fucking rage, this anger, this resentment to these men. And I knew these three directors who basically I knew them for 18 years. We're like friends in a sense, and it was like, how could they possibly do this? How is this possible? They could hurt us like this. They could literally ruin a business like this. How could they? You know, and I just couldn't believe it. And I went on this program in America with my brother and whatever. And I'd never done men's work before. I'd never done coaching in a sense like this. And it was in the mountains of California. And it was unbelievable, Alwynn. Honestly, Pat. It was honestly, I lay in bed on the Friday night, and it was 1 o'clock in the morning, and I remember literally, like, in my body, I'm looking for the pain. I was looking for that tightness inside, and it wasn't there anymore. And from the exercises, what we did during the day, which is obviously what I teach and what I do now, you know, just from my own learnings and whatever, my own experiences, it was like, how is this possible? For me to literally enter this container, and then within 5 or 6 hours, you know, on this retreat, to feel this pain disappear and this anger and this tightness disappear. It was like, how is that possible? And it was like, and I witnessed it over and over again on the weekend. It was incredible, Pat. The only way to heal is to find the courage to be vulnerable, to ask for help, and then to do the work.
And you know what this is bringing up for me, Davey, is something that I find is sometimes I find that the bigger investment you put into your own healing, you know, the more that you put out there, the more that you get back. And I just find, I don't know, like, I just see that the fact that you went over to America, you put yourself out there to go into this program with men. It's a very vulnerable space.
Yeah.
You know, I find sometimes that it's like, I don't know if it's just men, maybe it's women as well, but I feel women are more okay with this in many respects. But I find for men, there's this like inability or this resistance to putting themselves first and saying, I need to do this for me.
Mm-hmm.
I need to go away. I need to go to something that is going to put me in a space where I can heal these wounds on a deeper level. Mm-hmm. It's like, you know, in many cases, they might allow themselves to buy drink or like buy things that are materialistic or that suppress the pain. Yeah. But so often I find that men in many cases will not invest their hard-earned money in the help, support, in taking that fucking opportunity to invest so profoundly in themselves. And like you said, have so many awakening moments. Like, I'm sure that after that, you had to have a lot of integration, so much healing beyond that point. It doesn't change everything overnight. No. But it creates a cylinder, it creates a crack in that space for you to open up into a deeper space of healing.
Yeah. Well, you suddenly realize, well, if that's possible, what about this? What about this? And what about this? And suddenly we start evolving. And of course, the more healing you do and the more shadows you find, you know, the more you're going to discover more. And it's just a point of evolution until literally you are totally enlightened and you literally sit and meditate all day. And then we're back to what happens now, master. And he's like, chop wood, carry water. And it's like, but I'm enlightened. And it's like, yeah, but you're a human being. Chop wood and carry water. Keep living as a human being. And that's what I think a lot of us, especially in this space, in spirituality space, we forget. We've got bills to pay. You know, we've got jobs to do. We've got responsibilities. We are human beings. And but once we've ticked those boxes, then to dedicate a bit of love and compassion for yourself, which is really fundamentally what this is, by finding the courage to be vulnerable and the bravery to step out there and do this work, fundamentally it's self-love. Yeah. It may not feel it, but it is.
And it's tremendous. Like I see such a difference in my husband since, like, I remember he had said, one day to me, he had said, you know what, like I want to manifest men into my life who can hold that space for me. I want men that can be powerful and vulnerable, and you know, I want that in my life. And he just said to the universe, you know, he's like, I want to manifest men that are like me, wanting to grow, wanting to evolve. And I remember, you know, one of the guys I know, he's a breathwork facilitator, Ronan, and he had said, oh, there's this really great men's group here. And I was like, a men's group? I was like, God, honestly, if I would have said that to my husband 2 years ago, he would have said, you must have lost your mind. He would have said that was the most, been like, that's pathetic. You don't do, like, men don't do that, you know? And I came home to him and I said, you know, Ronan said that there's this men's group and men go and they share their feelings and it's a really like safe space. And he was like, brilliant, I'm going. And I was like, whew. He went the first day and he came home and he was like, he was just so vulnerable. He was like, fuck, like it was just, his ego, he was like, my ego is saying, never go back there. Never go back there, because that was just so out there, so vulnerable. And he said, so I'm going back there. You know, so everything his ego says to do, he'll do the opposite. But I see such a shift in him as a man than he ever has been in this macho. I'm fucking using those inverted commas. Macho space that he used to be in, strong, powerful, you know, respected. You know, he was a quarter of the man that he is now. And he is completely the opposite to that. He's very vulnerable. He shares his feelings with lots of other men. He creates a beautiful space for men to share what they feel.
Nice.
And I'm more attracted to him and more, you know, I love him more because of that. But one of the things that's really interesting, Davey, that he said to me recently and that I recognize very much is that even though we want our men to step into this power, step into the vulnerability, when they step into it, like I remember Brené Brown talking about this before, when they step into it or they step into their power, step into their anger, their rage, a lot of the time I feel us women then want to suppress them. You know, it's like Rob said to me the last day, you know, he had gotten angry about something and I had reacted, you know, and he had come to me later on and he was like, you know, babe, like I need to be allowed to feel my anger. You can't shame me for feeling anger because I'm not going to be you're trying to get me to feel all of these emotions, but then when I feel them, you're then suppressing me or, you know, rejecting me and shaming me for it. And I just recognize in that moment how uncomfortable we are. We say we want something, but then when it actually happens, when that man becomes vulnerable, when they step into that vulnerability or that anger, then us women are like, wait, that's not your role. Like that you were meant to be the strong one. You were meant to be the one that, you know, got it all suppressed. It's a shifting dynamic. It's a very fascinating thing.
It's a shifting dynamic because the woman has to do her work as well. And her work is seeing a man releasing anger at that moment in time, and it's all good. You know, it's like it's we're back to this like dynamic of like if one of you is constantly just doing work and the other partner isn't, depends how the relationship goes. But it is literally going to end up like this, you know? And for me, both of you, in a sense, have to be at a level where you understand where each other is.
Yeah.
And for the guy to be vulnerable and to show his emotions, which is, you know, not a regular thing for men, to show his emotions and to be vulnerable because especially if his partner's asked him to, and he goes to classes and does his work and whatever, and then he comes back and shares it with the wife. But the wife is like, hold on a sec. No, I like the quiet, placid man that does what he's told and helps me with the children and cleans up when I tell him to clean up and this, that, and the other. But that suppressed part of him is now not suppressed. Like, no, I choose not to do that. I choose to stand in my power, you know? And it's like, what do you want? You cannot have it always, you know? And it's when the woman then steps in her power. And this isn't an egotistical thing. It's a bit like what you're saying there. This inner power and this strength that your husband has now with the work he's done, which you are like so much more attracted to, that's true. That's true masculine. That's sacred masculine for me. That's divine masculine. That's that calmness, that balanced way of being. But if need be, we need to step it up here and take action. And we will. And there's no problem with it. And we will have confrontations and we will move forward or we will step out of the way and not have a confrontation. Whatever we feel has to happen, we're comfortable doing it. But that's an inner strength and an inner knowing because of the work that you've done, releasing these emotions and starting to find self-forgiveness and self-love deep within.
Yeah.
For all parts of work, the wounded parts, the real good, smart parts, everything's equal. We just bring them all together.
Yeah.
And it's just not one part of we're constantly driving the bus, you know?
Definitely. And that's
So
it. Like it's such a fascinating, like we think we want one thing, we think we want our partner to change, we want them to be better. Like you said, it's like, I want you to shift and change who you are because I don't like who you are. But then when they start changing, I find it, this because of my own husband, like, I've got a lot more interaction with men now, as in he's a roofer, but he talks a lot with the men in his work and many others, just about stepping into that power, into that vulnerability, creating that safe space. But I feel like, what I'm finding is so many men, they really crave that, to be able to be that vulnerable and step into that power. But I feel no more than a woman, it's like that fear of shifting and changing anything in case they disrupt the relationship, lose their wife, their partner, lose the kids, lose what they have built up. It's like, you say that you want X, but I need to be the provider. What happens if I step back from being the provider? My husband, when I fell to pieces, my husband couldn't fall to pieces. He was very much, he had to be that provider. And, in that time, it was really hard for me because he wasn't emotionally there for me, he was really struggling with everything that came up for me. And also he was struggling with so much that was going on within himself. But we talked about it a lot afterwards. And we both recognized that at that time, he needed to go to work and make money so that we could survive as a family. He needed to keep the lid on all of his own emotions, on everything that was happening, because it was like he couldn't do it all. He couldn't hold an emotional space for me while also going to work, while also worrying that I was going to kill myself 24 hours a day. I felt so sorry for him, because so many people saw me as the one that was struggling. And I was deeply struggling. Well, all of that time, he had to go to work, pretend like everything was okay, while every time the phone rang, he was terrified that I was going to say, I'm ready to kill myself. And he was dealing with his own pain, and he was trying to be there for the kids in the best way that he could. But it's just, I feel like we don't really see the men as much as we need to, and we don't appreciate, when they say, I providing is actually a very powerful tool. Like we do need, I know a lot of women are like, but I want you to provide, but I also want you to be here at home with us to experience our family. But also, I feel like, one of the things I recognize as well is, for my husband, I found that it was so hard for him to actually begin healing because of the fear that who's going to provide for this family. He has been incredible. He had saved quite a bit of money, over the years, but I wasn't working, and it's like, how do I fall to pieces as a man when my role is to provide? Can both of them, can both of them exist side by side? I was able to fall to pieces and get the help I needed because my husband was financially providing that. I could afford to get psychologists and whatever I needed to get in order to get that help. And it was like, I could feel it from him, that helplessness, that pure helplessness and powerlessness, that if I fall to pieces, who the fuck is going to hold this family together?
It's massive pressure. It's massive pressure on men, generally men in relationships with partners. And it's generally the man that'll earn more money, generally in a sense. But it's like, there's massive pressure on men, but it's,
and even if it's the other way around, like the same, if it's
whatever,
the female,
it's the same. It's like, still pressure on her then.
it's the same pressure. It's, you know, how am I meant to fall to pieces? Who's going to take care of the kids? Who's going to do all of this, you know?
Yeah.
And it's just, there's so much involved. And, you know, saying that in that respect, right, where you have, say, a man that recognizes that they have that pain, that recognizes that they're suffering, you know, what would you say as the steps? What would you say? How would you help them? You know, would there be some inner work? Would there be some inner questions that they could start asking themselves? You know, is there an evaluation of their life that they can go, am I struggling? Because a lot of the time it's actually the awareness that comes first.
Yeah.
And so like, you know, what questions would you be saying for people listening today? What would you say? Start asking yourself these questions. Start really looking at, you know, am I happy here? How many masks do I wear? How do I feel? You know, what would you be asking in that regard? And what other steps beyond that would you be, you know, recommending?
Yeah. I think the first thing is, like you say, awareness. Most of us live a life the way we live with life, and we think this is normal. This is just, and that's survival, getting up on a Monday morning and surviving till Friday, and then getting on the drink or drugs, whatever, all the weekend, and then waking up on Monday morning, and that groundhog just repeat pattern of survival is just, for a lot of men and women, you know, but we're talking about men in a sense, it's like, it's normal. This is just what I do. This is just, everyone does this. But first of all, they've got to be aware that they're not happy. Why are they not happy? What is it about their situation that they're not happy with? Whether they're lonely, whether they're sad, whether they're angry, whatever it is, you know?
Yeah.
But a lot of it we see with shadow work, we see so much in others that we have within ourselves. It's the only way with shadow work, we've denied these parts of us and we've hidden them away. The darkness that we don't want to discuss, you know, that we're scared and we're fearful of, and whatever, you know, that we're scared to come out, this monster you're talking about, this rage inside, we've kept it suppressed and it's hidden away. But we see it in others. And for us to see it in others and point it out in others, we have to have it within ourselves. Otherwise, we can't see it in others. It won't trigger us. If it triggers us, the triggering is the first key. When you get triggered with someone's behavior, someone's way of being, whatever that might be, you know, you have that within you. May not be the exact same thing, but it's a version of that within you. So what you see in others, you have within yourself. And then the question to ask is, what is it about this person, about this behavior, about this situation that is triggering me, that I also feel within myself? That simple question. It's massive.
Yeah.
Write it down, get it out your head. Again, we live in here, having these conversations continuously.
Yeah. And I would say, like, you know, I'll give a few examples because, like, you know, it's such a powerful tool, but it can be complicated. So say, for example, if you think and sit and go, someone that really irks me, someone that really just drives me consistently and saying pisses me off, you know? And so what that would look like, say, for example, someone who's angry all the time, who's just aggressive and angry all the time. Just if I find that really just like, I hate being around them, they, you know, they're just angry. I really just hate the way that they treat people and whatever. Sometimes what I've found is, you know, it's a part, like you said, I don't like their anger and their aggression because there is a part that is within me that I'm rejecting. So, because a lot of people get really confused with this one. So what I was saying is, where that person might be 100% to the left with their anger and aggression, you are more likely 100% to the left or the right,
to the right,
where you are absolutely not aggressive. You're completely peaceful and happy all the time. And so this person never gets walked on because they're like a gremlin or a fucking chihuahua or whatever it is that's constantly barking. And you're more likely to get walked on because you never stand up for yourself. So you don't like within them something that you have to bring into yourself. And so what a little bit of that then would be is, how can I take a bit of their anger, a bit of their aggression, a bit of that power and bring it into myself? What would I change within my life? Who would I want to get a bit angry with? Who would I want to get a bit rageful with? How can I go into the center rather than being 100% to the right? Another one is, I hate that person. They're constantly selfish. All they think about is themselves. You know, this is a very common one I find.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, so
Especially
if that
with
person
women.
is selfish, yes. So if that person's selfish, like, they don't think about their kids, they go out and get their nails done all the time. Like, they just think, it's so funny. Like, it's if I feel that that person's selfish or self-centered, it's like, okay, I reject that in them. And so where am I? I'm completely selfless. I'm completely sacrificial. And it's like, how can I start integrating a bit of that selfishness within me? How can I come into the center a bit, you know?
And that mask of the martyr, in a sense, that selflessness, that part of a lot of women who give to others and are constantly giving from a place of stress and anxiety and emptiness, but they're constantly just giving. They're depleting themselves because they're not getting anything back. And if people give them something back, it's the martyr. This, I'm doing everything for everyone, etc., etc.
Yeah.
But fundamentally underneath, there's that lack of self-love. There's that lack of self-acceptance, that lack of self-appreciation. So, and really for them to treat themselves, I'm going out for a coffee with my friends, and it's like, oh my God, I've never done this for months, whatever. It's like beautiful. It's this beautiful moment where but then they've got that guilt.
Yeah.
Shit, should I really be doing this? I could have maybe got this for the kids. I could have maybe, etc., etc. And that's, like you say, with the shadows, with the girl that gets her nails done, it does everything for herself and not for anyone else, So it's the extreme versions, and that's the shadow work. It's finding that balance, finding that in-between bit, as in, like, yeah, of course I'm providing for my kids.
Yeah.
But
and
I choose to look after myself.
And definitely, I find one thing that I recognize within myself, because I was completely like that. Like, I would be selfless, give to everyone. That was just my bottom line.
Yeah.
And one of the things I recognize as well for myself was I've never felt safe receiving. Because if I gave something, like, even love, everything had conditions. If I was to experience love, something bad would come with it. And so I just shut down that, okay, well, I'll just not receive. I need to give to others because that fills up my worthiness. I feel at least I am worthy. I am someone, I'm worth existing. If I give to other people, then I have a reason to live. I give, as a child, I gave, I never chose to give, but it was taken from me. I got used to giving. And even from a child, I was always very empathetic. I was always very good at helping people feel better. That was my absolute, I could do that all day, every day. And people, when you think about, as you say, the things that you're loved for, that was one thing that got me love, was by, even if they hurt me, even if they were the ones that had caused me pain, I always could make them feel better afterwards. And so that became my pattern. I won't take anything. I won't receive anything from you because that's not safe. But I will keep on giving and giving and giving because that's the only way to fill up my worth bucket. But like you said, it's like, the way I say it is, and that got me by until I had kids. That was fine. I worked that way until I had kids. Yeah. And then what it was like was, the way I say it is, I've got an empty well. And then, whereas before I would be able to shut myself away and try and recharge in some way.
Yes.
But then when I had kids, I had the kids around me all the time. And where I had that empty well, it was like my kids were in there with a spoon scraping after having after having a full-on gallon of water. They were like, I'm still thirsty. And they go into my empty well and they start scraping all of that water down the bottom of it. And I feel like I'm like drowning, I'm suffocating. I'm like, you've taken everything from me. I have nothing left to give. You're suffocating. You're killing me. It feels such a visceral pain. But I was like, what I say to people, and come here, I need to say it to myself so much more. When you start filling up that well with some cups of water, start putting some stuff back into your well, start finding that safety and giving back to yourself. Eventually, you have enough water in that well that it's brimming over, and you don't get angry with your kids. You're not screaming at them to leave you alone because they're taking from the excess. They're not taking from the bottom. But it takes quite a bit of time to refill that well.
It can, but that healing, which is, to me, it's basically in the heart chakra. It comes from the heart. That feeling of self-love, self-forgiveness. It fundamentally, we have to I believe in my work and in my own experiences, the only way we can forgive others and to love others is to fully forgive ourselves and love ourselves.
Yeah.
Now, I know that's an easy to say, and it's like, oh yeah, that was easy, and I just said that. But from that point, we are then overflown with love and appreciation for what we have, and then we connect to gratitude.
Yeah.
And from that point of gratitude and overflowing self-love and overflowing self-forgiveness, as in, I mean, have I done wrong in my life? Of course I've done wrong in my life. Every human being has. Do I have regrets? No. I fucked up and I'm going to fuck up again. It is guaranteed. Do I have any regrets? No. I've just let them go. I'm not carrying that shit anymore.
Yeah.
I choose not to carry that burden. We call it like rocks in a backpack in a sense, you know? And I choose not to lug this around, this burden I've created for myself for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
If I feel a rock and I get that awareness and I bring this rock out, I deal with that rock now.
Yeah.
That's what I do. I just deal with the problem now. I deal with it until I've let it go.
Yeah. And that's exactly it, what you're saying. Because, when you talk about forgiveness and you talk about self-forgiveness and you think about the things that you've done wrong, the things that are shameful, the things that you regret in the time, the only way to actually move on from that is to hold it, to hold that experience, like, to feel the shame. Like there've been many times where I've had to really do that. And I remember I was there and something happened recently to trigger, and it was interesting because it was something that triggered a bit of shame in the present, but it actually triggered a snowball of shame from way before. And so I just kept on saying, I choose to feel this shame. I'm grateful that I get to feel this shame right now. I'm going to keep on feeling it until I can't feel it anymore. But I'm telling you, it was as if I had a suffocating, like, gigantic rock on me. The way I was breathing and everything, I was like, jeez, all day long. It took so much to process that shame through my body, but it's the only way we actually move on. If we can say, oh yeah, I forgive myself, whatever, but if you haven't actually felt the shame from that moment, the pain, the sadness, you haven't forgiven yourself. You haven't dealt with that. You're just trying to bypass it and spiritually say, oh yeah, I forgive everyone. I'm over this. But if you haven't felt it, if you haven't allowed yourself to acknowledge it, there is nothing that you have done that is not worthy of forgiveness.
No.
That's the truth.
I know this,
You can forgive. And I'm saying this more so for everyone that's listening. We all, I know I can hear people listening right now and they're like, but you don't know what I've done. You don't know how I acted. You don't know. And that's the reason why I do this podcast, is because the way I acted with my kids was so shameful that people don't talk about that kind of stuff. They don't talk about it. And the reason I talked about it was because this is what's holding us back. Like, if I had held on to the shame of how I acted towards my kids and not allowed myself to find compassion and love, and come here, that's a consistent thing that I have to do, then my kids would have suffered ongoing because I can't connect to them through the layers of shame and pain. And so, forgiving yourself for something that happened, it's not about forgiving yourself for yourself only. Because in forgiving yourself for what happened in the past, and especially, if there's sexual abuse, especially for men with that shame of sexual abuse, whether they're conscious to it or not, if you can't forgive yourself for that and let go of that shame, your kids will suffer, your family will suffer, whatever it is that you did in the past, whether it was drugs, drink, whether you were promiscuous, whether you had an affair, whatever it is that you did in the past, if you can't find that forgiveness and compassion for yourself in the present, you're just going to carry that shit around and everyone around you suffers. And that's not to say that people will forgive you. I know that people might not forgive you. If you end up talking to the people, you can't talk to them hoping and expecting that they will forgive you. You have to forgive yourself and come to terms with the reality that they might not be able to forgive you. And you have to be okay with that.
We call that completing. We call that, with the different programs I've run in that, we call it like completing with people, where you've done something to them or they've done something to you, but you fell out. And it's about literally owning it, owning 110% of it, and having the conversation, writing some notes, whether it's a face-to-face conversation, a letter, whatever, but accepting responsibility for your part, not blaming anyone, finding forgiveness and to let it go, and then literally to disconnect. And you're disconnecting energetically, but you're doing it to find forgiveness for self. You're forgiving them. All forgiveness is self-forgiveness. It's a Wayne Dyer quote. All forgiveness is self-forgiveness. To forgive others, we are fundamentally forgiving ourselves. We are taking another rock out of the backpack. It's as simple as that, you know. I mean, the guys, the directors that did us out of that money, like that's like 6-7 years ago. About, I think it was 2.5 years later. 2.5 years later, I was doing this incredible men's course in Bali, and I'd obviously done a lot of work on myself and whatever. And it come to us during a breathwork session that I've got to forgive them. I knew I did, but I couldn't. It was just, what they did was just, you know, and it was like, it's time to forgive them, Davey. This is your time. And that's literally where the words came from in my head. This is your time. It's time to forgive them.
How did it feel? Did it feel any different afterwards? Like, did you feel something?
Yeah. It's like, so it's in your head. You're having this dialogue. So you're aware of it. It's like, really? Are we ready for this? And it's like, we're not carrying this shit anymore, son. This is exhausting, carrying these rocks, you know? We choose not to carry these rocks. And I literally I got to had my little laptop, and I wrote a basic letter, dear blah, blah, this, that, and the other. And I wrote 3 letters, and that was it. I took full responsibility for my actions of what occurred 3 years ago. It must have been 3 years ago. This, that, and the other. I apologized for my actions within what occurred and this, that, and the other. And I fully accepted and forgive them for their actions and what occurred, you know, with regards to them basically stealing, you know, that money in a sense. This is the way I've seen it. That, you know, we did the work, we didn't get paid, they stole the money, that was it. Them stealing the money. And I thanked them for what they did and put me on this journey, because this journey is so fulfilling. What I do now, we're coaching in men's work and women's work in different classes and that, and the breath work and whatever, and the different sessions. It's like, I'm not playing this game anymore. I choose a different game, and I choose to live fully from here. And the more I forgive them, and I sent 3 emails. I got an email back off one of them that said, thanks. That was it. I got an email back off another one the next day that says, I also forgive you. And that triggered me to like, you cheeky bastard. How could you, and as soon as the trigger come up, it was like, Davey, we've let it go, son. It's not ours to carry anymore. Give him it. It's his thoughts in what happened. It's his belief in what happened. You know, we all have different beliefs in what happens in the world. And it was just let it go. And I did. And and the completing has to be, you do this work, but you have not and you cannot have any expectations from the other side. If they forgive you.
That's the hardest part of it.
If they forgive you, great. If they accept you, great. If they say you're still a wanker, great. It's perfect. Whatever it is, because you are not doing this for their forgiveness.
Yeah.
You're doing it for you.
And I say the same about truth, you know, Davey? The same is within truth.
Yeah, of course.
Because so often we are afraid to speak our truth in case someone else doesn't agree with it or validate it. But your truth is only your truth if you feel it so wholeheartedly that you can speak it and not have the expectation of someone else saying that it happened, that it's validated. And obviously, because a lot of my childhood memories were suppressed, that's one thing I really battled with so often and so much, that the fact that no one has said that it's their truth, that's what caused so much pain. It's like, How can it be my truth and not be your truth? It has to be your truth in order for me to allow it, in order for me to accept it. But it doesn't have to be abuse. It's also about childhood, you know, where you have a parent or parents, especially with narcissism, where you just feel like you were treated one way, and then you kind of have all this pain come up and you're like, this is my truth. But if you go to that family member expecting them to own up to the cause, the pain that they cause, and they don't. You know, that's where that's where, like you said, you have to be ready to, it's not that it doesn't hurt. It's not that their rejection of it doesn't still hurt, but it's actually the fact that you can have that empowerment to move through the pain within you that they're not acknowledging your truth the same way, you know. And I think so often, you know, so many people won't allow themselves to acknowledge the pain within them because they believe that, well, this can't be true. And also my siblings seem to be fine. They don't have any issues. So it's obviously not my truth if it's no one else's truth. And I think that, you know, in healing, it really does come to that space where, like you said, everything is that internal acceptance, that ability to hold that space within you for whatever that truth is, whatever that forgiveness is, whatever that shame is, whatever that pain is, and that awareness and that courage and that fucking bravery to be like, I draw a line in the sand. I am fucking sick of feeling this way. I'm sick of my life being constant struggle, constant pain. And when we're in a life of constant struggle and pain, you can bet your fucking bottom dollar that there's a belief system there that says that all I deserve is struggle and pain. And I know that's there for me. Like I know, like we talked about today, that anger, that core belief of that little girl that I was, all I experienced was pain. My whole entire childhood was just constant, consistent suffering and pain. How am I not meant to have a belief system that, well, obviously this is just normal life. I'm meant to experience constant, consistent pain. And if I have a belief system and a narrative that life is hard, life is shit, bad things happen to me,
that's exactly what's going to happen.
I focus on, and all I bring into my life is life is shit, life is hard, and life is consistently painful.
That's exactly it.
We really have to take stock and, like you said, take responsibility for our lives. Look at your life and be like, am I experiencing the same shit over and over again? Because if I am consistently experiencing the same shit, I have to have a belief system that says that either I deserve it, that this is all I deserve, that I'm never going to have a better life, or some of my clients, you know, where their parents have had severe depression or have had such tough lives themselves, they passed on those belief systems. You know, life is hard, money is hard to come by, you know, relationships are tough, love doesn't happen. If you're struggling in any part of your life, with your children, with your wife, with your husband, with your life, it's really standing back and going, let me take stock of this. And I'll do it with you right now, Davey. Okay, with my kids, you know, motherhood is hard, Davey. Motherhood is hard. It's constant suffering. It's constant pain. I'm never good enough. That's my belief system. So what am I getting?
And what you're getting? What's the results? You're getting exactly that.
I'm getting motherhood is hard. Life is hard. And I'm shit at motherhood. Like I'm a shit mother. I'm not good enough, you know? So I'm projecting on, continuing on that cycle.
And you project that to your children, and it's exactly what you say. This is ancestry wounding. So from your childhood, you go back to your parents' childhood, and how were they wounded? How did they believe that what they did to you and how they treat you was normal and was acceptable, and that the results are the results, but this is just the way it is? That literally carries on and carries on. I believe fundamentally we are all here to learn massive lessons, and the lessons and the tests that we are given will continuously come and be produced in front of us until we are aware that that's my test. And once you get that test and you bring it to the forefront, and it's like, okay, how the hell do I deal with this? Whether it's anger, whether it's abuse from childhood, whether it's bullying, whatever it might be, core limiting beliefs, you know, it's the realization of like, This is why I'm here. This is why I'm here, to test this. But fundamentally, the test is self-healing, self-love, self-forgiveness. That's all of this work. Everything, for me, all coaching work, everything in life, every part of self-development work is about coming home.
Yeah.
And is about accepting you are perfect. You are absolutely beautiful. You are powerful. You are perfect. You are all of the above. We may not believe it. And this is where the wounding shields that so you don't see it. But when we do the work and we see underneath, we see we are absolutely fucking perfect in all of our flaws, in all of our insecurities.
Yeah. And you know what, Davey, like something I'll add to that, which is so important. And I think you're very much in the same frame as I am. You know, if someone comes to me and they're like, my husband he's driving me nuts and I can't deal with it, or my kids are, you know, I can't deal with their behaviors, or work colleagues, whatever it may be, you know, it's like, okay, how are you feeling? What is it that you want? What is it you need? So often we come to this work because we want to change those around us. We want to change the outside life. But change only happens when we realize and recognize that the only person that we can truly change is ourselves. The only person we can truly heal is ourselves. And by healing ourselves, by dealing with our own pain, that's not to say that someone outside of you isn't causing you pain. You know, that's not to say that other people outside of you may not be creating suffering within you. But until you heal the wounds inside of you and realize that you deserve better, you're just going to attract another man or another woman that's going to treat you exactly the same way.
That's
so
exactly
if you're
the same.
coming to this work, just know that you're going to get fuck all places if you don't take sheer full-on responsibility that I can only heal myself. I can only change myself. And in changing and healing myself, I realize what I deserve. I realize what I can change within me. And that creates the ripple effect of everything else that changes in my life, you know?
Yeah, that's exactly it.
The other thing I'll just say as well, what you were saying about, you know, those belief systems. So say, for example, when I say about my children, you know, like, and I say motherhood is hard, like it's fucking hard all the time. And, you know, I'm not a good mother and I hate it, you know? And so if I say, you know, you say that, okay, well, if you are feeling that, believing that, then that's all you're going to get. And I can hear this voice in my head saying, yeah, but you know that, but it is hard. You don't get it. It is hard. It's true. It's real. You know how we continue to really anchor it in. No, but it is. You don't realize how much pain I'm in. You don't realize how hard they are. You don't realize how hard my partner is. You don't get it. And it's like, I get it, honey, but it's not helping you. It's not helping you change your life. It's not that it's not real for you, but it's that it's not helping you to create the life that you want, you know, believing that motherhood is hard, believing that life is shit. It might be shit and that might be all you've gotten, but it's not fucking helping you to create a better life. How about if you try out saying, you know what, motherhood can be hard, but it's also really rewarding. Yes, sometimes I find it hard to be a mother, a conscious mother, or be there for my kids. But a lot of the time I am there. A lot of the time I am a good mom. And so often, like you said, I recognize that was just my mom's belief. You know, she resented us. I know she did. She resented us, and I felt it. I could feel that she was angry that we existed because all we did was reflect all of her own pain. And there we go. Here are my children. I'm resentful that they exist because they keep on mirroring all of my own pain. And so, in reality, it's that.
So that part of you, that feels motherhood is hard, and you resent your kids and your partner and the situation in life, and it's a battle and it's a struggle. And that part of you fundamentally is wounded and is in pain and is traumatized and is looking for love, compassion, kindness, care, support, all of the above. And it's how do you give that part of you that? And what I've found with the work I've done, somatic breathwork healing is incredible, because you store those traumas within your soma, within your body, within your being, the sinew, the muscle. When something happens, like during childhood and different things, and we get a shock, and we get such a shock that we literally fight or flight, on your situation where your subconscious mind is when we're shutting that out because it's just too much for you. So consciously you can't remember. Subconsciously it's just locked away. It's in there somewhere, but it's just locked away because it was just too bad. So we're not seeing that anymore. That's gone. That part of you was fractured off. That part of you is wounded. And that pain and that anguish, whatever it is, sits within your body somewhere. And this is where, with somatic breath work, with coaching, with conversations like this, we are literally highlighting, there it is there. There it is there. There, that's what we're dealing with. Let's just deal with this now. Now, this, you could class it as a rock in a backpack, a mask, a shadow, whatever you want to, whatever term you want to give it. But that is the wounding that we're going to deal with today, that we're going to speak about. And we're going to deal with this until that is no longer yours to carry.
Yeah.
And that is healed. That's all we do. We literally deal with one thing at a time. And generally, that first one you find is the big domino, is the big one, is the one that's underneath there. There's more and more layers. But when we can heal that one, literally, there's this sense of freedom, there's a sense of peace, there's a sense of empowerment, there's a sense of just knowing that, shit, life's not as bad as I thought it was. You know, like really appreciation and gratitude for what you have. And you've healed a part of you. And I've done this many, many times through my own journey over the last 6-7 years. And every time I heal a part of me, I become more content, more powerful, more in tune with me work, me purpose. What am I doing? Why am I doing? My choices become clearer.
Yeah.
You know?
It is like the work is hard.
Yeah.
But what you get from
it can be. The work can be hard.
I would never go back. You know, I would never go back to the person that I used to be. As much as this is hard, you know, it's so worthwhile. When you, like you said, when you reconnect with those parts of self that have so much pain and you hold them and you integrate them, there is no greater feeling on this earth. You know, nothing can buy that beauty, that freedom, that joy. And so what is it that you're doing? What kind of programs and stuff do you offer? And also I'd love if there's any, like, say, international ones, because we've got lots of people that, you know, will be listening internationally. If there's any of those men's groups and stuff that you did, I'd love for you to, you know, give us a bit of insight into all of them, and I'll put them all in the show notes afterwards.
Brilliant.
Well, let's start with your work first.
I am a certified life coach, and I've got a diploma in life coaching, and I was running a business for 20 odd years, and, you know, so my credentials, I've done breath work, somatic healing. I've been doing Kriya yoga meditation for the last 4 years. So I've done a lot of plant medicines, reasonable amount of plant medicines and what have you, which is another level of healing and appreciation. And I guess like real connection, sort of true connection with our classes, like to source, you know, to God source, whatever you want to call it. So it's like, I've got this experience within me to help and to heal people who are lost, who are insecure, who are in a state of, I'm not sure where, you know, what's next, is this it? You know, who maybe have got a successful relationship, business, whatever, and they just need that little bit of motivation to take them to the next level. You know, whatever it might be, it's like, I'm pretty open as a coach, where it's like, you know, I speak to women, I coach men. I did a couples session yesterday, it went great and that, you know, and we're back to like, I do the one-on-ones and I do the group sessions, but it's all about really fundamentally, what are you dealing with? Finding that awareness of what is the problem. And I have an ability from, I guess, my superpower from when my father dying and me making it mean I had to provide for my family. I found the most efficient ways to get results throughout my life. It's all I've ever done. For 30, 40 years, 50 years, I just found I've got good results, real good results, for the most efficient way possible. And that's no different with me coaching. I have an ability when I speak to I have an ability when I speak to people. I've got this intuition and this awareness where I feel things as I'm speaking, and I see the face change when they say certain words and certain things, and I just scribble little notes and then I bring them back, and eventually that's what's holding me back. And say, okay, then let's deal with this, and that's it. And we'll deal with that until it is dealt with.
Yeah.
And then we'll find something else, depending on how many sessions they've got. It might just, that one domino, like I say, might be, I feel amazing today. I feel, it's like, I feel incredible. I feel light. I feel freedom. I feel peace, and that's a lot of the feedback I get. We do that through like somatic breathwork healing, like I've said, different meditation techniques and whatever. A lot of it's just talking and different exercises. There's an incredible powerful exercise you'll have heard of, Ho'oponopono, the Hawaiian prayer, and that, about self-forgiveness and forgiveness of others, and that we've sort of created our own version of that in a sense, it's still using the same principles of it, but it's like, it's really effective. It's
amazing. And with your group work, is that something that runs consistently, or do you create them with interest? How do they work? The men's work or whatever.
I'm in the process now of creating a new program called Infinite Man and Infinite Woman, and it's the first program I did, which was like Series 1, Infinite Man Series 1, Infinite Woman Series 1. It was fundamentally about core limiting beliefs, a real like basic introduction on this is how the brain works, this is what's happened throughout your life, this is what you've made mean from all of the things that's happened, this is your core limiting belief, this is what's holding you back, where you've been procrastinating and what have you. And I've identified a lot of the masks. We go into shadow work, etc., etc., etc. This second program and doing the second series, Infinite Man and Infinite Woman second series, is basically about parts integration. So from them core limiting beliefs where we talked about the masks earlier on, we then reveal the shadows, the darkness.
Amazing.
And that's from the darkness and the shadows that we reveal these parts of us that are in conflict, internal conflict. We've spoke about a few of them today, Yeah. And when we have this conflict of parts, we are never at ease. We are fighting ourselves, but we don't realize we're fighting ourselves. So a lot of this work is about revealing the parts of us that are in conflict and about integrating those parts to bring us back to whole. You know? Yeah.
Amazing. I love that.
Yeah.
So I'll put all your details in the show notes. I'll put your email or your website and everything.
Yeah.
And with the other groups or the other things that you've done, do they still run in the?
I'm doing a breath work. I'm doing a breath work now on a Tuesday night. The next one's on the 4th of April in Perth at the EQ Wellness Centre.
Great. And for the ones that you did in Bali and America and stuff, would you recommend them if there's any people that are listening that are closer to those spaces?
Yeah, without a doubt. There's the group in America was called Remarkable Men's Project, and that was with a guy called Paul Velick. He was running it, and it was incredible. That was in California, Los Angeles way, Yeah. The Bali one was with Tim Morrison. I've done a lot of work with Tim.
Tim Morrison. Yeah.
He's brilliant, I've done a lot of work with Tim and that, And I did that, I did a program with Tim in Bali as well.
Brilliant. Yeah. That's great. I love all these joining of forces. It's amazing.
Yeah. I've got a retreat coming up with a group called Holistica. That's with Ryan and Jamie, and that's coming up in, I think it's June. I haven't got the dates, but I'll send you a link for that as well for men.
Perfect.
That's like a men's retreat, So I'm going to be doing some facilitation. I'm lucky enough to be chosen to do some facilitation down there. So I'm going to be stepping into that as well, But
fantastic. Well, such exciting things. Honestly, I really think that there's a massive shift happening right now.
Yeah,
like I really feel, there's more need for it, and also then more awareness and need for us to be talking about it and what's out there, because it's really like, for anyone that's listening that doesn't have access to either of or any of these kind of spaces, also, things like you said, breath work, just finding breath work on YouTube, self knowledge, you can start without any money, without any support. You don't have to go out there and get all the help. You can do it in your own silence. You don't have to tell anyone about it. It just takes that awareness, that stepping back. Am I happy? Am I actually happy? Am I happy in my relationships? Am I happy in my home? Am I happy as a father or a mother? Am I happy with my purpose? And it's the hardest thing to ask. Am I happy? It's a very daunting question. I know that I've done it recently myself, and I realized I wasn't. And that was a really scary realization for me. But it's only in allowing yourself to ask the difficult questions that you can ask, okay, well, why not? Like, I have incredible kids. I have an amazing husband. I'm starting with this work. And I was like, it's okay to still not be happy.
Yeah.
Because what I realized was I've never learned how to meet my own needs. It doesn't matter if I have all of these things outside of me that are so incredible and empowering. If I don't start to meet myself and what it is I need, what it is that I'm passionate about, and also be brave enough to figure that out.
Yeah.
To be reborn at 34 years of age, or 40 or 50. There's no age limit on your own rebirth,
Yeah. I've seen incredible change. I've felt it. I've experienced
Amazing.
it, and fundamentally you have to surrender to it. You have to be open. You have to be ready for it.
Yeah.
But when you're ready for change and you are open and you are ready to let go and surrender.
Yeah.
Boom, like that. Yeah.
And I think that's it. I think it's about all the individual paths. I think that everyone, needs to remember that, for you, it can be quickly, it can move and shift and change quickly. But if it isn't also, if your journey is longer, if you're feeling more pain, that's your purpose, your life path. Yeah. Don't compare yourself. We're so used to, well, Joe down the road, he's gotten over his whatever, and we are individually on a life path and a life purpose.
Yeah.
And we have to recognize that is our journey, our path, our purpose, and everyone is exactly where they need to be.
Yeah, it's perfect. Everything is perfect. Everything is perfect, and you are living the life that you are meant to live, and you have the freedom of choice and the power of free will. That's it. Yeah. And you choose, when you become consciously aware of, I'm not happy, I'm struggling, whatever it is, you then have the choice. Before you are consciously aware, you don't even have the choice. Yeah. But when you have these conversations and you get into this work and you're like, there it is, there's the problem, and you choose to still suffer, you are choosing to suffer. And that might sound really harsh for a lot of people, but that's what I've found. We are choosing this life, and we can choose another life. We just have to find the courage to be vulnerable. And I get it. It's for a lot. It's not easy to do. This work sometimes isn't easy. It's scary as fuck, but it can. The more we do, the more we let go, the stronger we become,
And on that note, I think we'll finish on the note of, you can have anything that you want, but you have to choose it.
Yes, that's exactly it. Exactly it. Yeah.
So thanks so much, Davey, for coming on for this conversation. Yeah. It was amazing, and I know I got so much out of it. And you know what? I feel like after this, I'm really going to have to do some integration time myself and really allow everything we talked about to sit and to resonate and to be with me. Like, really ask myself some hard questions. What are you continuing to allow yourself to exist within? What belief systems, what are you choosing right now? Because I feel like for me, that's really, what I need to be with is that choice that I can choose a different life. Yes, that's what my old story was.
Yeah.
But I can choose a different life,
That's exactly it. Yeah. So, thanks very much, Alwynn. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak, love. Thank you.
Thanks so much for tuning in today, guys. All the links to the information we discussed in this episode will be in the show notes, including timestamps where we change topics, so if you want to come back later and just listen to one section, you can. If you haven't done so already, please join our Facebook group, Let Me Be Free, The Wounded Inner Child, and post either anonymously or not what's going on for you in your world. We'd also be delighted if you would share this podcast or the Facebook group with one person who you think would benefit from the information. Be along, Mahaguf. Have a beautiful day.